Blessed day to you. So we are now on our seventh chapter in cognitive psychology course titled Language Structure and Comprehension. So here are some questions that we will explore in this chapter. First, what properties characterize language? Next, what are some of the processes that is involved in language? Next, how do perceptual processes interact with cognitive processes of reading? And lastly, how does discourse help us understand individual words? So let us read the quote below. Words are pale shadows of forgotten names. As names have power, words have power. Words can light fires in the minds of men. Words can wring tears from the hardest hearts. Okay, we can start. Let us look upon this. Believe it or not, do the Chinese think about numbers differently than Americans? How languages name numbers and how they are pronounced differs widely. There are even significant differences between English and French. For example, in English, the number 80 is called 80, and in French, it is quatre-vingt, or literally 420, or 4 times 20. Do those differences in language influence how our brain processes numbers and mathematics? This is what a Chinese research team set out to explore. So native Chinese speakers and Native American speakers worked on numerical tasks while being monitored by fMRI machine. So minomonitor sila ng fMRI, mga Chinese at saka American. So the results found that for simple addition tasks, different areas of the brain were activated for Chinese and English speakers. English speakers used processes that involved the left Persylvian cortices, whereas Chinese speakers use visual-premotor network for additional tasks. The results suggest that language influences the way non-language related content is processed. It is also possible that a Chinese language brevity for numbers, for example, yung number words sa Chinese, which generally contains fewer syllables than in English, increases working memory capacity, which in turn can result in more efficient processing. So, in this chapter, we will explore what language is, how we process language, and how it can influence our understanding of facts and environment. Okay, so let us start by reading this quote or these words from Helen Keller. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motions of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consciousness as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought, and somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. I knew that water meant the wonderful cool something that was flowing over my hand. That living word awakened my soul, gave it light, joy, set it free. Everything had a name, and each name gave birth to a new thought. As we returned to the house, every object which I touched seemed to quiver with life. I learned a great many new words that day, words that will make the world blossom for me. So this is from Helen Keller's story of my life. So Helen Keller became both blind and deaf at 19 months of age after severe childhood illness. So nabulag siya at saka nabingi, no, 19 months of age pa lang siya. So wala pa siyang 2 years old, no? She was first awakened to a sentient, thought-filled, comprehensible words through her teacher, Anne Sullivan. The miracle worker held one of Helen's hands under a spigot or yung plug ng isang faucet from which a stream of water gushed over Helen's hands. All while, she spelled with manual alphabet into Helen's other hands the mind-awakening word water or water. Okay? So language is the use of an organized means of combining words in order to communicate with those around us, no? Siyempre, yun yung means natin or yun yung nagiging transfer of information kung paano tayo nakikipag-converse or nakikipag-communicate sa bawat isa. It also it possible to think about the things and processes we currently cannot see, no? Yung hindi natin nakikita, hindi natin naririnig, hindi natin nararamdaman, nahahawakan, or naaamoy. So these things and include ideas that may not have any tangible form, no? Hindi siya something that we can see or touch. As Helen Keller demonstrated, the words we use may be written, spoken, or otherwise signed, no? For example, yung sign language. Even so, not all communication or exchange of thoughts and feelings is true language. Communication daw encompasses other aspects, no? Nonverbal communication such as gestures, facial expression, which can be used to embellish or to indicate. Glances may serve many purposes too. For example, sometimes they are deadly, no? Yung tititig ka or titingin ka, mafe-feel mo na may something wrong or merong pinaparating yung pagtingin, yung paningin na yun. Other times, seductive, no? Pwede ba yun ganun? Yung tumitingin ka parang seductive? So, communication can also include touches such as handshake, hits, no? And hugs. Uh, these are the only few of the means by which we can communicate. So, remember the term psycholinguistics. So, it is the psychology of our language as it interacts with the human mind. Again, remember the word psycholinguistics. It is the psychology of our language as it interacts with the human mind. It considers both production and comprehension of language. So, four areas of study have contributed greatly into understanding psycholinguistics. So, may four area daw para maintindihan natin yung psycholinguistics. Okay, the first area is linguistics, which is the study of language structure and change. Again, yung first area ng pag-understand sa psycholinguistics is linguistics. Linguistics is the study of language structure and change. Pangalawang area is neurolinguistics, no? Again, neurolinguistics. It is the study of the relationship among the brain, cognition, and language. Again, neurolinguistics is the study of the relationship among the brain, cognition, and language. Third one is the social linguistics. It is the study of the relationship between social behavior and language. Again, social linguistics or the study of the relationship between social behavior and language. And last, we have the computational linguistics and psycholinguistics. Again, computational linguistics and psycholinguistics, or the study of language via computational method. The study of language via computational method. Computational linguistics and psycholinguistics. So, sa kabuuan, this chapter briefly describes some general properties of language. So, yung next section, yung mga susunod nating pag-uusapan, discuss the processes of language. So, this process include how we understand the meaning of particular words and how we structure words into meaningful sentence. So, after our exploration of general language processes, so we turn to the question of how we read. Paano daw tayo magbasa? And last but not the least, we discuss how comprehension of larger language and text units like essays or conversation works, kung paano yung gumagana. So itong chapter na to describes the broader context within which we use language. So this context uses the psychological and social context of language. So now we would be defining what is language. So there are almost 7,000 languages that is spoken in the world today, according to Lewis as 2009. So New Guinea is a country where with the most language in the world. So it has more than 850 indigenous languages, which means that on average, each language though has just about 7,000 speakers. Surprisingly, there are still languages today that have not even been discovered and named by scientists. So a linguist who traveled to southern China's Yunnan province in 2006 discovered 18 languages spoken by the members of Pula ethnic group that never before had even defined and named. So, it is to be expected that there are many more languages that linguists do not know yet or do not know about. Part of the reason for Pula's language not having been discovered earlier is that the speakers of the language live in mountainous areas that are hard to access. What exactly constitutes language? And what are some things that languages have in common? So we would look on the properties of language, the basic components of words, and the basic components of sentence. So first, on the properties of language, pag-usapan muna natin yung properties ng language. So language can be strikingly different, but they all have some commonalities. So no matter what language you speak, language is the following. So these are the properties. First, communicative, no? Kapag sinabi natin communicative, so language daw permits us to communicate with one or more people who share our language. So, yun yung first property ng language, communicative. Pangalawang property is arbitrarily symbolic. Again, arbitrarily symbolic. So language creates an arbitrary relationship between a symbol and what it represents, such as ideas, a thing, a process, a relationship, or description. Again, una, a first property of language, communicative, used to communicate. Next is arbitrarily symbolic, no? Creates arbitrary relationship between symbol and what it represents, no? Such as idea, thing, process, relationship, and description. Third property, it is regularly structured. Again, regularly is structured. So, language has a structure, only particularly patterned arrangements of symbols have meaning, and different arrangements yield different meanings. Ulitin ko, regularly structured means language has structure, only particularly patterned arrangements of symbols have meaning, and different arrangement yields different meaning. So, pag nagbago yung arrangement ng mga symbol, magbabago rin yung ibig sabihin. Next property is structured at multiple levels. Again, next property is structured at multiple levels. The structure of language can be analyzed at more than one level. For example, in sound, no, meaning units, no, words and phrases, no, meron siyang multiple levels. Parang yung sa Philippine word din, yung iba-iba yung intensity, no? For example, iba yung ibig sabihin, mas masidhi yung ibig sabihin ng suklam kaysa sa lungkot, sa inis, sa galit, ganun, no? Okay, so panglimang property, generative productive. Generative, productive. So, ano ibig sabihin nitong generative productive? So, within the limits of linguistic structure, language users daw can produce novel utterances, no? Parang yung unique sa kanila, no? The possibilities of creating new utterances are virtually limitless, no? For example, sa Philippines, no, meron tayong mga tinatawag na balbal na salita na very unique sa atin. These are novel utterances. For example, one of the dialects that we can hear or we know today, no, for example, yung Gaylinggo, no? Ah, meron siyang unique utterances na ibang ibig sabihin, no? Iba yung ibig sabihin at or merong ibig sabihin na accepted sa ibang bansa na ganito yung meaning, no? Ulitin ko, generative, productive. And the last property of language is dynamic. So dynamic means language constantly evolve. So tuloy-tuloy siyang nagbabago, nag-i-improve, nadadagdagan, no? For example, sa Bicol dati, no, meron tayong tinatawag na sa Bicol dialect na rinconada, no? Ang word na ginagamit dati sa word na masarap ay masiram, no? Ang Bicol word for masarap ay masiram, no? Pero sa other parts, ang masiram ay nag-evolve na naging masiramon, no? Pero ang ibig sabihin din nun ay masarap. So, yun yung dynamic or evolving language. So, uulitin natin yung properties ng language. First, communicative. Pangalawa, arbitrarily symbolic. Pangatlo, regularly structured. Pang-apat, structured at multiple levels. Panglima, generative, productive. And last is dynamic. Ulitin ko. Una, communicative. Pangalawa, arbitrarily symbolic. Pangatlo, regularly structured. Pang-apat, structured and multiple levels. Panglima, generative, productive. At pang-anim ay dynamic. Okay, let's proceed. So yan yung mga binanggit natin kanina. The properties of language. Okay, So let's proceed naman to the basic component of words. So language daw can be broken down into many smaller units, no? Many smaller units. It is much like the analysis of molecules into the basic elements by chemists. So tinitingnan natin yung molecules, kung ilan yung number ng protons, electrons, neutron, ganyan. So the smallest unit of speech sound is the phone, no? So which simply is a single vocal sound. A given phone may or may not be a part of a particular language. So a click of your tongue, no, a pop of your cheek, or a gurgling sound are all phones. These sounds, however, are not used to form distinctive words in American English, no? So a phoneme, yung phoneme naman, yung nakikita niyo diyan, no, is the smallest unit of speech sound that can be used to distinguish one utterances in a given language from another. So in English daw, English phonemes are made up of vowel consonants like A, I, S, and F. For example, we can distinguish among sit, sat, fat, and fit. So the S sound and the F sound and the I sound and the A sound are all phonemes in English, as it the T sound. So this sound are produced by alternating sequences of opening and closing of vocal tract. So different language of different numbers and combination of phonemes. Okay. So tingnan natin, no? Yung phonemes dito, a subset of all possible phones in one language. Yung next level daw ng hierarchy after the phoneme is morpheme. Morphemes, no? Morphemes. It is the smallest unit of meaning within a particular language, no? For example, yung word na recharge, no? Word na recharge, pwedeng dalawa yung morphemes doon. Yung re at saka yung charge. Ang ibig sabihin, yung where re, ang ibig sabihin ng re, no? Which is a prefix, indicates a repeated action, no? For example, yung word na cable consists only one morpheme, although it's made up of two syllables, but the syllables cable, no, yung word na cable daw, the syllables cable do not have any inherent meaning, no? Walang meaning yung K, walang meaning yung ball, no? Walang inherent meaning. Okay. So from distinctive lexicon of morphemes. Okay. So ano yung lexicon? Yung nabanggit yun sa morphemes, no? Yung lexicon ay entire set ng morphemes in a given language or in a given person linguistic repertoire. Okay, then after that, no, susunod tayo sa words, no? Tapos phrases, no? And we have the sentences and the discourse. No, may mga examples tayo dyan. Okay, let's proceed. Ano naman yung basic components ng sentence, no? Dito tayo sa sentence. So although we put together sentence so seemingly easy when we speak, no, ang dali nating complete yung sentences kapag nagsasalita tayo, a substantial framework of rules hides behind our creation of these sentences. Syntax, S-Y-N-T-A-X, refers to the way in which we put words together to form sentence. So it plays a major role in our understanding language. So a sentence comprises at least two parts. Meron tayong noun phrase which contains at least one noun, no? Yung subject, no? And all the relevant descriptors of the noun. For example, big boat, uh, fast runner, no? Fast cheetah, no? The second is verb phrase or the predicate, no? Merong subject, may predicate, which contains at least one verb and whatever the verb it acts on, if anything. So linguists consider the study of syntax to be fundamental to understanding the structure of language. So the syntactical structure of language specifically addresses later in this chapter. Okay? So parang English, no? Yung subject na inaaral natin dito. Okay. Now we would look on understanding the meaning of words, sentences, no? And larger text units. So understanding words, understanding the meaning, the semantics, and understanding the sentence or the syntax. So kapag tayo ay nagbabasa o nagsasalita, so napakalaga na hindi lang natin naiintindihan yung mga words dun sa mga pangungusap, dun sa mga sentences, pero nafi-figure out din natin yung ibig sabihin, no, nung buong conversation. Lalo na kapag nilatag sa isang malawak na pag-uusap. Kasi pwedeng kung at as it lang, no, pwedeng ibang ibig sabihin niya, no, yung as it is lang yung word na yon, no? Unlike kapag ginamit siya sa bigger sentences, pwedeng magbago yung meaning niya. So, semantics is the study of the meaning in a language. Semantics would be concerned on how words and sentence express meaning. Yung discourse naman encompasses language use as a level beyond the sentence, such as conversation, no? Kakaroon ng discourse. Yung paragraphs, stories, chapters, o yung kabuuan ng work na literature discourse yun. So, mapag-aaralan nyo, mas marami pa kayong pag-aaralan sa discourse later sa topic na to. Okay? Now we proceed with understanding words. Okay. So, na-try nyo na bang minsan yung meron kayong kausap sa cellphone nyo, pero ah, yung salita na naririnig nyo ay garalgal, no? Parang hindi nyo siya maintindihan dahil sa mahinang signal or nawawala-walang signal, no? So, kapag nasubukan nyo na yun, mag-agree kayo na yung speech perception ay napakahalaga sa language, no? Kung paano nyo na-perceive, no? Kung malinaw ba kung paano niya binibigay yung speech niya, napakahalaga para mas maintindihan natin yung tao. So, understanding speech is crucial to human communication. So, dito sa section naman to, ma-investigate natin kung paano natin pina-perceive yung speech. We will also reflect on the questions of whether speech is somehow special among all the various sound we can perceive. Sabi sa ating pag-aaral, no, we are able to perceive the speech with amazing rapidity, no? Napakabilis kung paano natin mapaperceive yung speech. On one hand, pwede daw natin ma-perceive yung as many as 50 phonemes per second in a language which we are fluent. For example, yung Tagalog. Kahit tuloy-tuloy akong nagsasalita ngayon, naiintindihan yung 50 words na sinabi ko at hindi nyo napapansin na itong tuloy-tuloy na pagsasalita umabot na sa 50 words. Pero naiintindihan nyo yun. Tama. So, sinasabi na kapag nag-understand daw tayo ng words, meron daw mga tao na nagsasalita ng faster o mas mabilis or mas mabagal, no? So, minsan din may iba't ibang paraan ng pagpronounce ng sound or ng words depende kung saan nanggaling. For example, napapansin natin na yung purong Tagalog or yung mga Tagalog talaga, mapapansin mo na napakalinaw ng kanilang pagsasambit or pagsasalita ng mga salita. Pero hindi naman to masama no sa paningin, pero sometimes kapag ikaw ay nanggaling sa Visayan part region, no, Cebuano, for example, kami, yung father ko ay Cebuano, minsan yung pagpo-pronounce ng mga ibang bagay ay may ibang punto kung paano pino-pronounce. Even yung mga ibang kaibigan ko na taga Botolan, no, parang may pagkakapareho sila sa Bisaya kung paano nila i-pronounce. Minsan yung F ay nagiging P, no? Father, no? Yung F, father ang sabihin nila, no? Tapos, for example, alam niyo na yun, alam niyo ibig sabihin. Minsan may mas matigas kung paano i-pronounce yung mga words, minsan may yung normal lang or yung kung paano talaga dapat i-pronounce, no? May kakaibang punto. So, one example dito, sinabi dito sa ating reference, may isa daw elementary school teacher na nag-pronounce ng get, no? No? At ang kung paano niya pronounce ito ay get the papers, no? So, medyo napansin ng mga estudyante at parang hindi gano'n yung pag-perceive nila, akala nila parang nagjo-joke, natawa sila, no? So, napakahalaga. Speech sounds are very variable, napakahalaga nun. But even the word sounds differently every time you hear it, you still need to be able to figure out what word it is, no? Depende kung paano siya ginamit sa sentence, no? So, what makes it even more complicated is that often we pronounce more than one sound at a time. Minsan iba-iba yung pag-pronounce natin, iba-iba yung paggamit natin ng sound. No, ang tawag dito ay co-articulation, no? Ulitin, yung co-articulation, ito yung pagpo-pronounce ng more than one sound at a time. So, one more phonemes begin while other phonemes still are being produced. For example, the word palace and pool, they both, tulad nun, yung both, they both begin with P sound. But can you notice a difference in shapes of your lips when you say palace and pool as compared to the P, no? Kung pagko-compare niyo kung paano pinopronounce yung palace and pool, no? You're already preparing the following vowels as you pronounce the P sound, and this impacts the sound you produce. So ito ay isa sa mga proof na not only do phonemes within the words overlap, but yung boundaries between words in continuous speech also tend to overlap, no? So yung process daw na sinusubukan nating i-separate yung continuous sound stream into distinct words is called speech segmentation. So kailangan daw natin i-segment ng tama yung mga speech, yung mga salita para mas tama yung mga ibibigay nating words na pinapaintindi natin, no? Hindi pwedeng, for example, sasabihin ko, pinapaintindi natin. No, dapat pinapaintindi natin. Ganun yung pag-segment ng speech. Kasi kapag hindi, no, pwedeng mali yung interpretation natin or mali yung makuha ng listeners or readers ng ating uh, words or ng ating phrases. Okay? Okay. So, let us look on the views of speech perception. Sinasabi, no, na isa daw sa approach sa ating speech perception ay nagsasuggest ng kung kailan natin pina-perceive yung speech, no? We use the same process daw as when we perceive other sounds like for example, yung tumitilaok na manok na sa background, no? Pareho daw yung pagpe-perceive natin kung paano iniintindi yung nagsasalita sa pagtilaok ng manok. So ordinary daw yung speech perception. Or pwede rin daw as special, no? We view of speech perception as special. So sabi ng mga ibang researchers daw, sinasuggest nila yung speech perception process daw ay different sa pagpaprocess na ginagamit natin kapag pinapakinggan natin yung mga normal na sound lang. No, ang ibig sabihin, iba yung processes kapag pinapakinggan yung nagsasalita na tao at yung nakikinig kayo ng normal na sounds. For example, yung pagtilaok ng manok. Okay, so first we would look on the categorical perception. So one phenomenon daw in speech perception that lead to the notion of a specialization was a finding of this, the categorical perception. So discontinuous categories of speech sounds that it is, although the speech thou sounds we actually hear comprise of a continuum of variation and sound waves. So we experience speech sounds categorically. So this phenomenon can be seen in the perception of the consonant vowel combination, for example, yung ba, yung da, and your ga, and ga, no? As speech signal would look different for each of these syllables, some patterns in the speech signal lead to the perception of ba, other lead to the perception of da, and other lead to the perception of ga. So, ibig sabihin, may iba-ibang category depende sa pinopronounce na word or depende sa kung paano pinopronounce yung consonant vowel combination. For example, yung ba, yung da, and yung ga. No? How about yung motor theory of speech perception? Motor theory speech perception naman said that we use the movement of the speaker's vocal tract to perceive what he says. So observing that the speaker rounds his lips or presses his lips together provides the listener with phonetic information. Thus, the listener uses specialized processes involved in producing speech to perceive speech. In fact, there is substantial overlap between parts of the cortex that are involved in speech production and speech perception. Minsan daw may factor daw na para maintindihan natin, no? Para ma-perceive natin yung speech ay tinitingnan natin yung motor parts or tinitingnan natin kung paano niya pronounce sa kanyang labi or sa kanyang lips. Kasi pwedeng pareho yung sound pero iba yung paraan na pinuproduce niya yung sound sa kanyang bibig. For example, paano natin pinuproduce yung word na langgam, no? Kaya ba nating i-produce yung word na langgam nang hindi nagdidikit yung labi natin, yung upper and lower lip? No? Can you try? No? Say the langgam word without your upper and lower lip, no? Being together, no? Parang ganun. Okay. But it's possible. Let's proceed. No? Pwede nyo nalang intindihin to, pero na-explain ko na to sa first part. No? Same processes when we perceive other sound. No? May different stages daw siya sa neural processing. May trees model, which is interactive, acoustic, phonemes, and words. No? And napakahalaga daw yung importance ng context ng sound na narinig natin. Ito yung sa ordinary. No, you can just read that. No, na-explain ko naman yun on the first part. No, sa special, no, ito yung binanggit ko kanina, may categorical perception, ba versus da versus ga. No? Depende yung sa pitch kung paano siya produce. No? Kung ang baba ay iba sa da at iba sa ga, kahit magkakasound sila, no? Merong categories na dito sila kabilang. So, it is a specialized process daw, kahit categorical perception yun. no, kahit ordinary, no, rather. So, the motor theory, no, uses movements of the speaker's vocal tract, kung paano pronounce, no, yung lips, no, and meron tayong tinatawag na McGurk effect. Ito yung explanation dun sa pagsasabay, no? Na tinitignan natin kung paano pinopronounce sa lips at saka napapakinggan natin. So, McGurk effect, no, is the synchrony of visual and auditory perception. So, when watching a movie, for example, the auditory syllable is perceived differently depending on whether you see the speaker make a sound that matches the pronunciation of syllable or make other sound that does not match the syllable spoken. So for example, kayo, imagine nyo yung sarili nyo nanonood ng movie din. As long as the soundtrack corresponds to the speaker's lips movements, you encounter no problem. However, no, suppose that the soundtrack indicates one thing such as the, at the same time, the actor clearly makes the movements for another sound like ba, you are likely to hear a compromised sound such as the, no? Even yung mga nagli-lip sync na kumakanta, nakikita natin kapag tamang-tama exact yung pag-pronounce nila, no? Kahit hindi sila pala talaga kumakanta, okay lang, walang problem. Pero kapag binuka nila yung bibig nila, tapos iba yung sound na lumabas, no? Doon natin mapapansin yung problem and mapupuna natin yun. That is the McGurk effect. May factor yung visual sa naririnig natin. Okay? Okay? Continuing with understanding the words. So, in understanding these words, yung categorical perception daw ba at saka yung uh, or rather yung view of speech as ordinary and special, pwede ba silang mag-synthesis or magsabay or magsama? Or is it possible? So assume yes, no? Hindi siya hand in hand na yung isa, yun lang yung nangyari, no, ordinary. For example, yung tilaok ng manok at saka yung pakikinig mo sa nagsasalita ngayon, no? Pwedeng simple siya, no? Pero pwede ring in categories, pero pwede rin siyang in special way. So linguistic and perceptual attributes may come hand in hand, no? So pwede silang magsabay na nangyari at the same time. Now we would understand the meaning. Okay? Now, understanding sentences on its syntax. So, an equally important part of the psychology of language is the analysis of linguistic structure. Napakahalaga rin ng structure ng mismong languages. Hindi lang yung word na kino-convey natin yung meaning, pero yung structure mismo ng sentence, no? Kailangan tingnan din natin kung paano siya formulate. For example, yung the man hunted the lion, no? Iba ang ibig sabihin nun sa the lion hunted the man. So syntax is the systematic way in which words can be combined in sequence to make meaningful phrases and sentences. Again, syntax is the systematic way in which words can be combined and sequence to make meaningful phrases and sentences. Papasok din dito yung learning on grammar. Okay? Okay. So, understanding syntax, ito yung kanyang mga parts, no? You have your syntactical priming, speech errors, phrase structure grammar, transformational grammar, and relationships between syntactical and lexical structure. So, una muna natin tignan is yung syntactical priming. Under this, we tend to use the structures we heard, no? So kapag it's something we learned or it's something that we hear on, no, ito rin yung ginagamit natin. For example, a certain word is used as this, no? We will use this word as this. For example, yung mga tawag natin sa tinapa, no? Hindi natin sinasabing tinapa na isda, it's tinapa, no? Yun yung syntactical priming. Wherein, no, ginagamit natin kung paano natin naririnig na ginagamit. Next, we have here the speech error under syntax. Okay, so speech error, these are error that we make which are syntactically true, no? Wherein ito yung mga hindi naman natin sila intentional na sinasabi ng mga salita, pero ito yung nababanggit natin. For example, napagbabaliktad natin yung mga bagay. Nasubukan nyo na bang sinabi na, for example, naisalang ko na yung kawali sa mantika, no? Or naisalang ko na yung kawali sa isda. Napagbabaliktad natin yung mga parts ng sentence wherein hindi naman natin usually intention yun, no? Or for example, naipasok ko na yung oven sa cake. No, napagbabaliktad natin, no, similar to programming, parang ganun din yun. No, sometimes, hindi naman natin intentional, pero may mga bagay tayo na napagbabaliktad. No, isang example dito at magandang example dito is yung slip of the tongue din. No? No, hindi naman natin sinasadyang biglaan na masabi. Okay. Analyzing sentences, phrase structure, grammar. So, itong mga examples natin ay ini-indicate nila na tayong mga tao daw ay meron tayong mental mechanism, no, to classify words according sa kanilang categories or syntactical categories. Itong classification mechanism ay separate sa pagka-classify natin ng meaning para sa words or pag define natin ng meaning ng words, no? When we compose sentence, we seem to analyze and divide them into functional components. This process is called parsing. For example, itong nakikita natin dito, we assign appropriate syntactical categories, no? Often called parts of speech, for example, yung noun, verb, article, yung subject, predicate, yung mga ganun. So, ditong sentence na to, the girl looked at the boy with the telescope. Kung iba yung pag-parse natin or pagpili natin ng subject and verbs, no? Pwedeng magbago rin yung meaning, no? Usually, ang nag-separate sa kanila minsan ay mga punctuation marks. When the girl looked at the boy with the telescope. No, tumingin daw yung babae sa isang lalaki gamit yung telescope or tumingin sa pangalawa, tumingin yung babae sa isang lalaki na mayroong telescope. Okay. Si Noam Chomsky ay isa sa pinakakilalang philosopher at kilala rin siya sa field ng cognitive science. Isa sa kanyang mga major na theory ay yung tinatawag na universal grammar, kung saan yung mga bata daw kailangan daw na meron munang basic knowledge regarding their native language para mas lumawak yung kanilang pagsisintak sa mga sentence or yung pag-formulate or pag-aayos ng kanilang grammar sa future. So, napakahalaga na hindi rin sila deprive ng stimulus, no? At dapat every now and then, no, binibigyan ang kung paano sila kinakausap is yung proper way ng pakikipag-usap. Isa to sa mga foundation kung bakit sinasabi na iwasang i-baby talk ang mga bata kapag sila ay meron ng capability to learn how to talk. Okay? Okay. A new approach to syntax, which is transformational grammar. So let us now look at the following sentence. Consider the syntactical relationship between the sentences. Susie greedily ate the crocodile. Next sentence. The crocodile was eaten greedily by Susie. Third sentence. The crocodile greedily ate Susie. Sentence 4. Susie was eaten greedily by the crocodile. No? If kung titingnan natin yung pattern natin kanina, no? It's like mapping a tree to another tree, no? Kapag tinignan natin, there is what we call deep structure and surface structure. Yung first and second sentence natin, almost similar ang kanilang meaning. And yung third and fourth sentence natin ay similar din yung meaning. Pero iba yung way na ito ay deliver. Susie greedily ate a crocodile. Crocodile greedily ate Susie. Ayan. Kung talagang pagtutuon natin yung pansin, hati-hatiin natin. For example, in sentence 1, na-identify natin yung noun, which is Susie. Meron tayong adverb, greedily, yung verb, ate, no? Medyo napakarami. May determiner tayo, yung the, no? And another noun, which is crocodile. So, medyo matrabaho yan. Let's proceed. Ayan. Yan yung pinapakita dun, no? Kapag dinivide natin yung sentences. Ganyan ang pagsisyntax. Phrase, structure, grammar. Okay? Now, we would look on the relationships between syntactical and lexical structures. Okay. So, dito naman sa part na to, no? Also coming from Noam Chomsky, he also addressed how syntactical structures daw may interact with lexical structures. Ano yung lexical structures? Yung mismong words, no? He suggested that our mental lexicon or yung sarili nating grammar sa isip natin contains more than the semantic meanings attached to each word or morphemes. In addition, each lexical item also contains syntactical information. Okay? Sabi dito, each lexical item contains syntactical information. Yung syntactical information na yon, sa bawat lexical item ay nag-indicate ang tatlong bagay, no? First ay ito, noun versus verb. Next, the appropriate syntactical context in which particular morpheme may be used, such as pronouns as subjects versus as direct objects, yung mga ganon. And last is any idiosyncratic information about syntactical uses of morpheme. No? Maybe such as treatment of irregular verbs, no? We also have what we call the thematic roles. A link, a link between semantics and syntax. No? Yung pagkakategorize at saka yung mga deeper meaning ng words mismo. Okay? So para minsan mas maintindihan pa natin yung tinatawag nating thematic roles or ways in which items can be used in the context of communication or yung parang context clues kung paano ginamit yung words, no? Several roles have been identified in particular, and these roles are itong mga nandito. The agent, which is the doer of the action. The patient is the direct recipient of the action. The beneficiary is indirect recipient of the action. The instrument, the means by which the action is implemented, the location, the place where the action occurs, the source where the action originated, and the goal where the action is going. Okay. Now we would go to reading. Akala natin reading itself is simple dahil nakasanayan natin. But reading itself is so complex. A discussion of how we engage in this process could be placed in any of the chapters in our previous lessons or even yung mga future chapters natin. At minimum, reading involves perception, language, memory, thinking, and intelligence. No? You have to recognize the letters on this PowerPoint presentation or the pages, letters in the pages of your book, put them together to form words that have meaning, keep their meaning in the memory until you have finished reading the sentence or even paragraph, and think about the message the writer, for example, tried to communicate to you. Although there are many different process going on, we read with remarkable speed and accuracy. Sabi nila, ang average adult daw can read prose at about 250 to 300 words per minute. Proceed. Now, when reading is a problem, I think you're already familiar with dyslexia. You have already encountered some topics in psychology that is stating what dyslexia is. To better understand what process are involved in reading, no, tingnan muna natin yung mga tao na may trouble sa pagbabasa. Again, people with dyslexia or difficulty in deciphering, reading, and comprehending text can suffer greatly in society that puts high premium on fluent reading. No? Kasi kailangan napakalaking bagay na ikaw ay nakakabasa. Problems in phonological processing and thus in word identification pose the major stumbling block in learning to read. So ito yung mga processes na impaired sa dyslexia. First is phonological awareness. It refers to the awareness of the sound structure of spoken language. So a typical way of assessing phonological awareness is through phoneme deletion task. For example, children are asked to say, for example, goat without the T. No? Another task is used in phoneme counting. Children might be asked how many different sounds there are in the word fish. No? Ilan ba ang sound na narinig sa fish? No? Merong tatlo, yung F, yung E, at yung SH. Fish. Okay. So next is phonological reading. So when entails reading words in isolation, so teachers sometimes call this skill word decoding or word attack. For measurement of skill, children might be asked to read words in isolation. Some of the words might be quite easy, others difficult. So individuals with dyslexia often have more trouble recognizing the words in isolation than in context. So when given context, they use the context to figure out what the word means. So next is the phonological coding. So in working memory, so this process is involved in remembering strings of phonemes that are sometimes confusing. It might be measured by comparing working memory for confusable versus non-confusable phoneme. For example, yung child daw, no, he might be assessed for how well he or she remembers the string TBZVG, TVZVG, no, versus ayan, OXRYQ. Most people will have more difficulty with the first string, TBZVG, no? Wherein yung sound nila ay mas magkakaiba, unlike yung OXRYQ. So, but individuals with dyslexia who have problems in phonological coding in working memory will have a particular trouble with that. Last, we have the lexical access. So, it refers to one's ability to retrieve phonemes from long-term memory. The question here is whether one can quickly retrieve a word from long-term memory when it is seen. For example, if you see the word pond, no? Do you immediately recognize the word as pond, or does it take you for a while to retrieve it? No? Pag may sinabi sa inyong word, hindi nyo agad mag-get, kung ano ba yung pond? Ah, okay, alam ko na yung pond. No? Yan yung mga naging problems, no? Yan yung mga naging process, nagkakaroon problem ang isang individual na merong dyslexia. Okay. So, development of dyslexia. So, ano nga ba talaga ang symptoms? Symptoms ng dyslexia itself. So, there are several kinds actually ng dyslexia, hindi lang siya iisa. The most well-known kind is developmental dyslexia, no? Which is difficulty in reading that starts in childhood and typically continues through adulthood. Most commonly, children with developmental dyslexia have difficulty in reading the rules that relate letters to sounds. Yung second kind naman ng dyslexia is called acquired dyslexia. It is typically caused by traumatic brain damage. No? A perfectly good reader who experienced a brain injury may acquire dyslexia. So going back to developmental dyslexia, so it is believed to be or to have both biological and environmental causes. A major dispute in field is the role of each. Para mas maging specific tayo, no? People with developmental dyslexia have been found to have abnormalities in certain chromosomes, which is notably chromosome number 3, 6, and number 15. However, no, educational intervention can help reduce the impairments in reading caused by dyslexia. Okay, now we would go on perceptual issues in reading. A very basic but important step in reading is the activation of our ability to recognize letters. So when you are reading, you somehow manage to perceive the correct letter when it is presented in a wide array of type style or typefaces or iba-ibang font. No? For example, you can perceive it correctly in capital and lowercase and even in cursive form. No? Such aspects are called orthographic. Okay, so looking at this, no? According to George Bernard Shaw, no, he's a playwright and lover of English language. He observed the illogicality of English spelling now. No, he suggested that in English it would be perfectly reasonable to pronounce GHOTI as fish. So paano nangyari yon? Na ang GHOTI at ang FISH ay parehong pronunciation. Kapag daw yung GH mula sa rough, no? At saka yung TI mula sa nation, no? Huff, ash, nagiging hush, para siyang fish din, which is one of the problem in English. And which is sometimes it's a repeating loop, no? Minsan depende sa paggamit, pwedeng ganun yung pag-pronounce mo. Example, the bologna is already considered as an English word, no? But iba yung pag-pronounce sa kanya, yung bourgeois. Though derived siya sa other language, they are accepted in English language. Or yung words na yung letters na O, U, G, H, O, no? May iba-ibang words such as though, bow, both, through, half, and enough, no? Iba-iba yung pag-pronounce niya depende sa kung paano siya ginamit. May letters, may sounds, may words, semantics, at kung paano siya ginamit sa sentence. Similar pa rin yung tapa at tinapa. Okay. So in learning how to read, no, kailangan tingnan muna natin yung lexical process, no? Ito yung flow ng words sa ating isip, no? And next we have the comprehension process involved, no, para maput natin to meaning yung mga words na nasa isip natin. Okay, lexical process in reading. Okay, so we have what we call the fixations and reading speed. So when we read daw, our eyes do not move smoothly along pages or even along line of text. Rather, yung eyes daw natin ay nagmo-move sa tinatawag na movement which is saccades. So nabanggit ko na ito sa biopsychology dati. It is the rapid sequential movements of the eyes. So as they fixate on successive clumps of text or words, the fixations are like series of snapshots and are variable length, no? So readers fixate for a longer time on longer words than on shorter words. They also fixate longer on less familiar words, no? For example, yung mga highfalutin words, no? Than one familiar words. So the last words of sentence also seem to receive extra long fixation time. This is be called sentence wrap-up time. No? Kapag nagbabasa tayo ng paragraph, usually, try natin obserbahan. Minsan, nafe-fixate tayo sa pinaka-last letters ng word. Mas mahaba yung pagre-read na natin or pag-stay ng eyes natin dun sa last word, unlike sa mga words before it. Okay? We also have what we call the lexical access. Lexical access is an important aspect of reading. So it is the identification of words that allow us to gain access to the meaning of the word from memory. So most psychologists who study reading believe that lexical access is an interactive process. It combines information of different kinds such as features of letters, letters themselves, and the words comprising the letters. How about the intelligence and lexical access speed? So some investigations on information processing and intelligence have focused on lexical access speed. So it is the speed in which we can retrieve information about words. For example, yung mga words na hindi natin gano'ng kasure, no, is stored in our long-term memories. This speed can be measured with a letter matching reaction time task first proposed by Posner and Mitchell in 1967. Ayan. Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, no? Yung fixation yan, our eyes do not move smoothly. So, successive clumps, so saccades ang tawag, we fixate more on longer and less familiar words. Meron tayong tinatawag na sentence wrap-up time. Ito yung nag-i-stay yung ating eyes sa last parts ng paragraph. Only 80% daw of the word will be fixated, no, up to visual span, which is 4 left and 15 right. So, saccadic yung terminology natin dun sa movement, no? Or saccades. Speed read, no, is equal to less understanding of the text. So, kaya minsan, kapag mas mabilis nga daw yung pagbabasa natin sa text, no, mas mabagal yung pag-understand natin or hindi natin mas naiintindihan yung text. Unlike kapag binabasa natin mabuti at mabagal. Ito yung binanggit ko kanina, lexical access. No? Identification of word that allows us to gain access to the meaning of the words from memory. No? Occurs at multiple level. No? Ano nga ba yung ibig sabihin nito? Nag-gets ko na. Parang nire-retrieve natin siya from our long-term memory. Okay? The interactive activation model, which goes like this, no? May factor yung ating visual input, no? The letter level, tingnan natin yung word level, no? Yung letter level kasama dito yung font size, word level, no? Yung clumping ng words, first bottom up, second top down, no? Yan, for example, yung picture, yung way of reading, pwedeng bottom up or top down. Pero usually top down tayo. Okay. Nasabi dito na letter is identified for easily in word context. Mas madali daw natin i-identify yung letters, no, kapag within the word siya kaysa kapag isolated lang siya or nakahilawalay siya mismo sa word. Okay, for this part, so participants daw are shown pairs of letters such as big A, or big A, small a, or A and small b. For each pair, they indicate whether the letters constitute match the names. They are also given simpler tasks where they are asked to indicate whether the letters match physically, like yung big A, no, physical matching, no, physical identities, and yung A at saka small a, no, name matching, no, hindi sila physically match. The variables of interest in the difference between their speed for the first set of tasks involved name matching, no, second set daw involved physical characteristics. So the difference in reaction time between these two types of tasks is said to provide a measure of speed and lexical access. This scores is based on subtraction of name match minus physical match reaction time. The subtraction controls for mere perceptual processing time. No, students though with lower verbal ability take longer to gain access to lexical information than students with higher verbal ability. No, these results suggest that lexical access is component of verbal ability. So the more we are able to express ourselves, the more we are able to tell what's in our mind, no, mas mataas yung verbal ability natin, mas mataas din daw yung ating lexical speed or yung process ng words sa ating brain. Okay? Now we go to understanding conversation and essays or discourse. So what is a discourse? Discourse involves unit of language larger than individual sentence. In conversation, no, yun yung discourse, no, conversation, lecture, stories, essays, and even in textbook, no, mas mataas ang level niya kaysa sa sentence lang or simple sentence na one way lang. So, just grammatical sentences are structured according to systematic syntactical rules. Passages of discourse are structured systematically too, no? yung way ng pagsasalita natin ngayon, yung pagsasalita natin, naiayos natin yung subject-verb agreement natin. In-express natin yung tamang process, yung tamang syntax, at tamang semantics na gagamitin natin. Kaya may factor yung knowledge natin sa context ng ating sinasabi or yung mga context ng mga sinasabi nating mga salita. Okay, now we would look upon the semantic encoding. No? Paano daw natin ma-retrieve yung word meaning sa ating memory? So semantic encoding is the process by which we translate sensory information, no, into meaningful representation. This representation is based on our understanding of the meaning of the words. So in lexical access, no, we identify words based on their letter combination. We thereby activate our memory in regards to the words. So in semantic encoding, we take the next step to gain access to the meaning of the words stored in our memory. Paano natin ma-engage ngayon yung semantic encoding? The reader needs to know what given word means. So knowledge of the word meaning. So yung vocabulary, no? Very closely to the ability to comprehend text. So kailangan meron tayong vocabulary or knowledge with regards what the word means para mas maintindihan natin, no? Kaya napakahalaga ng ating vocabulary. Sinabi dito, no, na a number of studies suggest that in order to grasp the meaning of a text or a paragraph with ease, no, one should know approximately 95% of the vocabulary or yung words na nandoon sa text na yon, no. Still, another study suggests daw that for one to enjoy reading the text, no, one needs to understand 98% of the vocabulary, no, being read. Pero minsan meron namang nag-enjoy na kahit hindi ganun kadami yung alam nilang vocabulary dun sa binabasa nila, nag-enjoy sila sa mga highfalutin words or yung mga words na medyo hindi niya pa alam yung meaning. Okay? Let's proceed. How about comprehending unknown words or deriving words meaning from the context? So, dictionary or formulating? Paano ba natin dinedefine minsan yung mga salitang hindi natin alam? No? So, another way in which having larger vocabulary contributes to text comprehension. Ito na yung tinatawag nating context clues, no? Is learning through context kung paano siya ginamit sa sentence. Whenever we cannot semantically encode a word because its meaning is not already stored or wala pa to sa memory natin, we must engage into some strategy para mas maintindihan natin. To derive meaning from the text, no? In general, we must either search for the meaning using external resources such as dictionary, teacher, or other person na pwede nating tanungin, or formulate a meaning. So using context cues, we formulate the meaning based on the existing information stored in a memory. No? So, titignan natin kung paano. So, tulad nito, a noble spirit embiggens the smallest man. No? Hindi usually ginagamit yung word na embiggens. Pero kung paano siya ginamit sa sentence, smallest man, embiggens. No? Parang ano siya, no, antonym. No? Pinapalaki daw ng noble spirit yung napakaliit naman. So, high verbal people daw derive easier. So, kapag if you are more verbal, no, you are more madalas makipag-usap, makipagkwentuhan, mas dumadami rin yung vocabulary mo or how do you understand specific words even though it's highfalutin or a little bit not familiar to us. Okay, now we would learn naman how to comprehend ideas using propositional representations. So ano nga ba yung mga propositions? So what factor influence our comprehension on what we read? So according to Walter Kinch, no, meron siyang dinevelop daw na model of text comprehension based sa kanyang observation. According to his model, as we read daw, no, we try to hold as much as information as possible in what we call the working memory. No? So to understand and know what we read. However, we do not try to store the exact words we read in working memory. Rather, we try to extract fundamental ideas from a group of words. When we store, those fundamental ideas are in simplified representation from our working memory. So, paano yun nangyari? For example, may mga certain types of sentences, word, information. Kunyari, nagbabasa tayo ng novel. Tinatandaan natin yung specific character sa novel na yun, ito yung characteristics niya. Ito pala, itong taong to, ito yung characteristics niya sa novel. Nasa working memory natin yun. And later on, kapag lumitaw bigla yung character na yun, maaalala natin na ito yung characteristics niya. So, makikita natin yung plot na, merong something wrong dito or ito yung makakatulong sa problem nila, for example. No? Okay. So, ang tawag dito ay macro proposition. So, ito yung parang nagbibigay tayo ng background check, no? Or nagbibigay tayo ng background definition kung ano yung nangyari dun sa situations or ano yung nangyari dun sa sentence kapag binabasa natin ng tuloy-tuloy. As long as it is relevant to the topic that we are reading, no? Mas maintindihan natin na ito yung definition ng isang bagay base kung paano siya ginamit sa buong paragraph or sa sentence, no? For example, dito ang ginagamit pala nila yung ring as symbol ng kanilang friendship. Tapos biglang nakita niya yung kaaway nila may ring. Ang ibig sabihin, kaibigan yun. Parang mga ganun, no? Dahil ito ay nasa ating working memory. So, meron daw tinatag na 1,300 word experiment na ginawa dati wherein sinubukang pinabasa yung mga participants and they tend to reiterate what they have read, no? And obserbahan ng mga researchers na gist yung kanilang na-form and parang nakuha nila yung general idea kung ano nangyari. Parang na-represent sa kanilang mind in simpler forms wherein nandun pa rin yung plot ng story. Okay, let's proceed. Okay. So, minsan daw, may malaking factor din yung point of view kung paano natin makomprehend yung text. For example, merong isang bahay, no? Yung bahay na yun ay pinapresent sa dalawang tao, no? Tapos, yung isang pagpapresent dito ay sinasabi yung content ng bahay, ano yung mga features niya, no? Ano yung mga makikita natin dito. No, sa point of view daw ng isang thief, no? Tatandaan niya kung ano yung mga specific points na para sa tingin niya ito yung mga mahalagang bagay dahil meron siyang other agenda. Pero sa buyer ng wealthy house, no? Na yun, na matatandaan niyo yung mga features na kailangan niyang improve, na kailangan niya itong bilhin kasi meron itong ganitong features. Depende rin daw sa point of view yung pagko-comprehend ng text. Similar to sa tao, no? Na iba-iba yung point of view natin kung paano natin iniintindi yung mga topics, yung mga sentences, yung mga paragraphs na pinaparating sa atin. May kanya-kanya tayong ideologies. Lastly, no, representing the text in mental models. So once the word daw are semantically encoded na, or their meaning is derived from the use of context, the reader still must create mental models of the text that is being read. No? So this mental model stimulates what is going on in the world. So a mental model may be viewed as sort of internal working model of the situation described in the text, as reader understands it. In other words, the reader creates some sort of mental representation that contains main elements of the text. So these elements are represented in a way that is relatively easy to grasp, or at least that is simpler and more concrete than the text itself. So, after the words have been encoded, for example, yung mga nagbabasa dito ng mga Wattpad or yung mga stories or or novels online, kahit wala silang specific, particularly visual representation ng mga characters doon, nagkre-create sila ng mga mental image kung ano yung itsura ng mga characters, no? Nagkre-create sila ng mga situation at yung mga nangyayari, naiisip nila yun, nagkakaroon sila ng tinatawag nating mga mental images, no? Kung ano yung nangyayari at nabi-bridge ito, no? Nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na bridging, no? Sa reality, no? Wherein nagkakaroon tayo ng somewhat imagination, pero kung how do we present, no, in our mind, no, it seems like it's real and it's happening. And finally, no, we have what we call the minimalist belief. So minimalist belief or minimalist hypothesis. So readers daw or individual make inferences based on or only information that is easily available to them. They do so only when they need to make such inferences to make sense of adjoining sentences. So for example, no, nagbabasa kayo ng novel sa isang Wattpad. Kapag may binigay silang itsura or pictures doon na kunyari yun yung characters, may imagine talaga natin na yung mga pictures na pinesent doon ayun yung mga characters na nangyayari, no? Or gumaganap doon sa nangyayari kahit hindi naman totoo sila. Kahit yung mga tao na yun ay ginamit lang naman for the sake na merong ipakitang presentation, no? Or ipakitang picture kung sino yung gumaganap. Okay. So that is the minimalist belief, no? What is available, what is convenient in our mind at that moment. So that would be all, and I hope you had a nice day.